I can remember my dad taking a team and wagon, early 30s, about 34, 35, be gone all day coming to Potosi. He always stopped out at the real farm because at that time they had a large orchard. Pears in the fall of the year were always one of the things I can remember he brought home.
Okay.
And I can remember, I'm talking about when they paved 21. I didn't get to come to Potosi too many times till we, after the 40, and the road was paved then, but I can remember my dad talking about that when they paved 21 south, it was just paved on one side for 3 or 4 years. Well, the M Highway, I can remember the house on the farm was built in 1911, and I can remember where Trail Tree Farm is now, my dad said had the bluest, gummiest mud that there was in the country, and they hauled the lumber from out on Furnace Creek. At that time, that was a large pinery in that area, and they had a sawmill. The pine from that they built a house with came from out in that direction.
Okay. And that was all done with teams?
Teams, wagons, right.
Now, your dad had a team. Did he have oxen or horses?
No, that I never remember it. I've seen oxen, but I've seen that up east when I went to see my daughter. If you've never seen oxen's work, it's an art within itself. But I remember some of the old timers talking about a few teams of oxens were here in the north end of the county, but I never saw them. I remember in my uncle's barn there was an ox yoke that his dad had, but that and the spinning wheel were two of the things that used to catch my attention. And I know the spinning wheel took legs and left, and I don't know what happened to the ox yoke. Whenever I was still at the one-room country school, we had I guess it would be kind of like a play at Potosi. That was the old school system over here behind the Belgrade Bank. I remember they had an auditorium. And Miss Edna Drennan, who was the county musical director under the county superintendent of school, who was Fred L. Cole at that time, we had to play. I remember my uniform for the day was a little boy from Denmark. Had knee pants. It was blue. My mother took cardboard and put white muslin on it to make me a little Danish cap. And my significant other for the little girl come from another school district, and I can't remember her name or the district, but I remember we were a pair at that time in the 3rd or 4th grade. That's one of the things that I can remember.
So she was from Denmark as well.
Right.
At the time.
They were representing foreign countries is what it was. And you remember I said 60 some odd, so there were several different sets of boys and girls representing countries.
Okay.
Edna L. Drennan, I can remember she was our vocal and music teacher. We did have a piano in the old school, and whenever she came, we had music.
So she rotated through.
She rotated around.
Wow.
And talking about the first teacher drove in, she walked from the local half to 3/4 of a mile to the schoolhouse with her little satchel to administer us. So,
Wow.
you know, teachers wanted to teach at that time.
They had to, yes. Yes. So how often would she come by?
Oh, it might be every 6 weeks, 2 months, maybe longer than that, depending on the weather and schedule, what she had put together.
And I would think that she would be there for half a day, a whole day.
Oh no, she usually came for a half day. Tried to make 2 districts. Usually spent about 2.5 hours at the school. She tried to make 2 schools a day. One thing that I just popped into my mind, you've heard of Silver Burdette books, maybe. Scholastic is the one big one today, but Silver Burdette in my day was a maker of books, and I can remember one of the old song books and see the purple color. Hadn't thought about that in years, but I trying to think of somebody that might have went to Potosi School about that particular era. Some names that you might think about. Lawrence Akers. Lawrence is 93 or 4 years old. Gene Smith in the same category. Gene, I think, was the senior whenever I was in the 7th grade, so he's that much older than I am. Eddie Siegel was in Gene's class. Eddie is still alive. Do you know Eddie? No? Lives on the cemetery, Big River Cemetery Road. Getting a little closer to the age bracket, there's 2 mail carriers still alive that came out of Mineral Point. Richard Heater and Gene Smith's brother Bill. They carried mail out of Mineral Point for several years, both retired. There are a couple of names that you might think about. They lived in a little different area, not too far from me, but further north than I was anyhow. In my senior yearbook, he's talking about things to do. Irondale was about the furthest of my travels. In the senior yearbook, there were 23 places of business. And you think about the Forest Milling Company. There was the bank. There was the hardware company. There was the shoe shop. There was the ladies' hat shop. There was 5 grocery stores.
5 grocery stores.
5 grocery stores. There's Smulches, and Adams's, and Buck Rafts, and Province's. Can't remember who owned the other one. Caroline's. But I can remember the first time I ever ate a hamburger at a restaurant was in the little building that was later the ladies' hat shop. But I can remember my first hamburger that my dad bought me. Cost a nickel.
A nickel. Well, tell us about it. Tell us about the experience.
Well, I thought I was really uptown getting to eat in the restaurants, you know. I can't remember the occasion. I think I was about 7 years old. A gentleman by the name of Doniger owned the restaurant at that time.
Was it just you and your dad or your whole family?
Oh, no, just me and my dad. My mother was... I never remember my mother getting out of the state of Missouri. When she and my dad were first married in 1917, she lived in St. Louis for 2 months. That was the extent of Mom ever being out of Washington County.
I understand that. I have a good mom story in that respect. from the time I was as big as I can remember, knee high to a grasshopper, as they say, my mom always said, I want to go to Colorado and see the mountains. And through high school, college, she occasionally the thought would come up, go to the mountains and see them. So I got out of dental school and I told my wife, I said, we're going to take my parents to Colorado. Okay, sounds good. So talked to my dad, and I said, Dad, we're thinking about taking you and Mom to Colorado, and would like to do that. He said, well, that sounds like a good time. He said, I've got an Army buddy out there. We'll just go visit him, and we'll go to Colorado. I said, okay. I said, I'll get it all set up. So and I said, now, we're not going to have much time. We're just going to have a week, so we'll probably fly out and rent a car. Okay, sounds good. So we got everything together, got all the reservations made. I was out at the Mom and Dad's house one afternoon, and I said, Mom, guess what? I don't know. What's going on? I said, we're going to take you to Colorado to see the mountains. Boy, she got a big smile on her face. She was just, it was like, oh. And then all of a sudden, the light bulb came on. And I watched her face drain, and the smile went out of her face. And she looked at me and she said, how are we getting to Colorado? And I said, well, Mom, we don't have very much time. We just got a week, so we're going to fly. She thought about that for about 2 seconds, and she said, I've never wanted to see those mountains that much anyway. And I said, Mom, I said, I can remember this tall you were talking about wanting to see them. Well, I've changed my mind. I don't think I want to go. And I said, okay, Mom. I said, we've already got the tickets. We're going. We've talked to Dad. He's ready to go. And if you want to go, you're more than welcome. And if you don't, I guess you can just stay here. Well, that put her in a real quandary. So she finally said, I will go to Colorado. And she went, she flew, she sat the whole time in the seat. We had a wonderful flight. Oh my goodness. I thought the seats would have, handprints in them permanently when she left. But she went, she had a good time, and that was the first time she had ever been out of the state of Missouri.
I can remember that, and it was after I went to school at Irondale that Dad had a lot of eye problems, and he would catch what was then known as number 3 at about 3:15 in the afternoon and go to St. Louis to go to the eye doctor. And
so that would be an all-day, or an all-night.
Well, you go in according to how whether he had any surgery done or not. He stayed with my uncle if he did, and come home whenever the doctor released him.
Okay.
But
so you could there would be trains come through at different times during the day?
Yes.
There would be more than one a day to St. Louis?
Trying to tell you another little funny here after I get this out. There was a train at 11 o'clock of a morning that came south. It was the good train. It brought Duffner's ice cream from DeSoto to the drugstore. Number 3 went north at 3:15 in the afternoon. These all stopped at the station. There was 2 I can remember that only stopped if they were flagged. That meant they had a paying passenger, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
Texas Eagle was one of them. Yeah. One other funny thing that I can remember, and this was in the 40s when the war was going on, and Irondale at that time had a sidetrack. And I can remember that one of the passenger trains had about 8 or 9 cars on it. It was going north, 11 o'clock in the morning. And the other was a freight train going south. Freight train got on the siding and he was 4 cars too long, still blocking the main line going north. And I can remember the passenger train stopped before they ever got within what terminology they used, within the blocks. And they conferred a little bit, and the passenger train pulled north until his last car was past the siding where the freight train and the engines pulled out to where the cars on the north end were out of the mail line, and they went on. I observed that. So ingenuity at work there.